8-5, the most wins since 2017. It feels oh so good to be a Gamecock right now. South Carolina certainly hoping that the momentum carries over from year to year, because the way that they finished that regular season in 2022 is the way they certainly hope to start and continue this fall. I have with me here in studio national college football writer Brad Crawford to talk a little South Carolina. We got to start with the quarterback position, and Spencer Rattler had a reemergence really towards the end of last season. What got into him?
He did 70% of the season last year. He was a cataclysmic bust from a five-star transfer perspective. In the last couple weeks, starting with the Vanderbilt game, played really well here in Nashville, and then carried that over against Tennessee. 6 touchdown passes against the Vols, 63 points, the most points the Gamecocks have ever scored against a top 10 opponent. Then he went to Clemson. A couple touchdown passes, he got over an early pick 6, beat the Tigers, snapped a 40-game home winning streak, and then played pretty well against Notre Dame. So Spencer Rattler is a guy that I would put in the elite tier of the current SEC quarterbacks. I do not have him number 1 in the preseason. That goes to KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. But Rattler is a guy that I think this year proves that he'll be an early round pick in the 2024 NFL draft. And he's a guy that with a new OC in Dal Loggins, I think the offense will be simplified a bit. There were issues last year with Rattler. He would make a spectacular play followed by 2 plays where he'd miss an open guy over the middle. He'd miss a guy out of the backfield. But I do think the transition to a new offense, Marcus Satterfield is at Nebraska now, bringing a guy from Arkansas as an assistant. Rattler's going to show that he's a quarterback that maybe deserves some of that first-round hype.
Yeah, you have him ranked 5 on your list of preseason SEC quarterbacks. He is behind the likes of Joe Milton, Devin Leary, Jaden Daniels, and who you have number 1, as you said, KJ Jefferson. You mentioned it, though. He's got much bigger dreams beyond college football. We're starting to talk about NFL draft and what his stock looks like there. So what do you think that he needs to prove this fall to get back into that conversation that he entered as a 5-star?
We hear NFL scouts all the time, Emily, talk about traits. Spencer Rattler has the arm. I think he has it between the ears like an elite quarterback is supposed to have. The problem with Spencer Rattler during the course of his career has been the consistency issues. He'll have a game at South Carolina like last season where he'd throw for 175 yards, have a couple turnovers. He's not used to the drops that he saw last season. Gamecocks wide receiver core has to help him and do a large part of that too. So I do think Rattler is a quarterback that can finish inside that elite tier. I've got him 5th right now. Joe Milton and Rattler are sort of identical players. We know the height of those players can be in that elite supremacy quarterback role. But as far as Rattler ranking in that top 3, I don't have him there yet.
Yeah, both of those quarterbacks also have new offensive coordinators coming into this season. Dal Loggins taking over for the Gamecocks on offense. I would say that he was met with some mixed reviews when that hire was initially announced.
That's putting it nicely,
to say the least. I'm trying to be nice here. What is the shift in his mentality and maybe the fans' mentality on what he can bring to the South Carolina offense?
Dal Loggins was certainly a surprising hire by Shane Beamer. Every source I've spoke to in Columbia, though, that was the guy that Shane Beamer targeted to be his new play caller from the start. It wasn't Garrett Riley, who landed at Clemson. It wasn't some of these other OC hires. Dal Loggins is a guy, he was an assistant at Arkansas last season. Most of his career, he's been an NFL play caller. He's never called a college play. In the SEC with the big boys, you've got to be proven. So I think that's why some of the Gamecock fans maybe weren't interested in this hire at first. But he's a Spencer Rattler guy. Dal Loggins, as soon as he stepped on campus, he was one of the leading guys to convince Rattler to return for another season and not go early for the draft. So I think Loggins was a great hire. I think he's going to be a really good play call for South Carolina. And simplification is the key. Last season, Marcus Satterfield, too many personnel groupings, too much issues offensively for a team that was loaded with talent but did not produce on the field.
Speaking of personnel, who does he have to work with on offense this year?
He's got Juice Wells, arguably the SEC's top returning wideout. LSU's Malik Neighbors has something to say about that, but Juice Wells is a guy that if he was 6'3", we're talking about probably a top 15 pick. He's a 5-tool type wide receiver. He's got Trey Knox, Arkansas tight end out of the portal. Gamecocks lost Jaheim Bell to Florida State, one of the SEC's most versatile players last year. I think replacing Bell with Trey Knox, you're not going to see a huge production drop-off. But the big question for me on offense is they only have 4 scholarship running backs. Running back 1 right now is DeCarrion Joyner. He's a converted wide receiver, so there's some issues there. They got a guy out of the portal from a smaller school. They also have Dontavius Braswell, 4-star freshman, who's going to play early in that season opener. So Gamecocks running game right now under Dal Loggins. We don't know how it's going to look. You've got an elite quarterback in Spencer Rattler, and he's got several targets, including 5-star Nicholas Harbor, who's going to suit up this season.
Yeah, speaking of, been absolutely tearing it up on the recruiting trail. So the offseason has been just as exciting as the end of last season for Shane Beamer. But what can we expect as we head into year 3? What's like a realistic expectation for him to accomplish this fall?
I tweeted a few months ago, and this was directed at South Carolina fans. Be cautiously optimistic, because this schedule is the definition of brutality. 66% winning percentage. That's what Carolina's opponents this season on this year's schedule won last year. It's brutal. It's bookended with UNC and Mac Brown in the opener in Charlotte. They play Clemson, and those are non-SEC games. They also got to go to Georgia. They've got to go to Neyland. Gamecocks haven't won there in a long time. After last year's win over Tennessee, you know the Vols are going to be gearing up for that game against South Carolina. So I think 7 wins, 7-5 is my projection. 8-4 would be a really quality season, but I think even a 6-6 finish, getting to a bowl game, still keeps Shane Beamer's momentum where it needs to be heading into year 4.
Yeah, they just continue to build, and that's what you want to see, is get a little bit better each and every year. He's Brad Crawford. Make sure to check out more of his work at 247sports.com. And for my big Gamecock fans out there, for more comprehensive coverage, be sure to visit the Big Spur for all things South Carolina football and recruiting.